Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Football Funhouse podcast. It is a Friday night, and I have nothing better to do than podcast. So here I am with Steve Marcus, who also has nothing better to do in his life. Actually, Steve, you got better things going on. It's just none of it that you're really enjoying right now, huh?
Yeah, I got a lot going on. I mean, I got plenty of other things I could be and probably should be doing right now. But yes, it is absolutely nice to come and take this time away and be able to talk some football with some other adults. Posey, new daughter, she watches football. She actually enjoys watching it. I'm sure it's just a color blur of movement going on. But she enjoys it, which I'm okay with. So I'll take it right now.
My daughter in her first year loved golf for whatever reason. I think it was just the bright green color, but it captivated her. It used to drive my wife insane, which was awesome. But it was a lot of fun because I got to watch golf, and she just would kind of zone out and watch it with me. So that's a lot of fun. I know you've had a rough season.
Back. She doesn't talk back.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, worst thing you got to do is change a diaper while you're watching. So, that's not the end of the world. You can do that.
No, I'm saying it gets lonely. Like I'm trying to talk to her about football.
Oh, you want her to talk back? I think just wait. When she gets a little older, you will not want her to talk back. So, yeah. But you know what? I know you've had a rough season. I know it's been a difficult journey for you this year in a lot of fantasy leagues, particularly in the Falafel League of Record. But you know what? We're into the playoffs, as most people are. It's week 14. We're geared up. I know you're not in the playoffs in that league, but you are in a battle to make the next couple of weeks a lot more friendly for you. So that's good, right? You're about to start to stave off relegation.
Yeah, for my second year out of the last 3, I've been put into this position where I've been almost being relegated from Falafel. But I got a good start with D.D. Westbrook on Thursday night. He ended up with 18 points and a half-point PPR. So that was a very good start. If I win this week, I am safe for all intents and purposes. So yes, I am. I'm a little scared still because anything can happen. This has been a weird season, but I'm encouraged by the start. And I'm hopeful to be back another year. Our good buddy Zapped, who's been in Falafel since the league began, is on the cusp. And if he loses this game, it is looking like he's going to be dropping down to Falafel Junior. You, on the other hand, are on the other end of the spectrum there, buddy.
I am on the other end of the spectrum. I did finish the league in first place, which was actually worked out quite well. I did not expect to get the number 1 seed. Works out quite well because our good pal Sal has dropped all the way down to the 8th seed, which in this league is the last playoff seed. And his team is a legitimate hospital infirmary. So for me to be able to play him this week, I think I have a decent I like my chances because he has no one left.
Who is he even starting? I mean, he had Melvin Gordon, Alex Collins, Devontae Freeman, AJ Green. Like that was his core.
Yeah,
at the beginning of the season, and none of those guys are playing.
They are not playing. None of them are playing. I think who was the one? I think he even had lost someone this week alone, right? I'm trying to pull it up right now. So if you could amuse yourself while I'm doing that.
Unfortunately, I can.
Let's see.
That's not good podcast material there, Kevin.
No, it's not. So looks like I believe I don't know if Gio Bernard is actually playing. He might be one that actually plays. So maybe that was it. Oh, Doug Martin, that was the other one who got on the injured list, but it looks like he's going to be okay. He's going to play this week as well.
Yeah.
Eric Ebron has missed practice pretty much all week. It looks like he's going to play. So it's been a tough year for Sal. I mean, and the worst part about it is Sal's usually really good with the waivers. I'll give him credit for that. He's great. He usually has good luck with picking up guys mid-season. But in this particular league, with that many injuries, given it's a 3-player keeper, he can't even make that many moves because he's got to hang on to these guys.
Yeah. At some point, you can't just drop. You can't cut bait on someone like Devontae Freeman, who's not going to play, who has a solid keeper value. You can't just get rid of those guys. You have to hold on to them. And also on top of, having to keep people, a lot of guys in the league are pretty keen on the waivers, and so like you have to stay on top of it, and it dries up. There are weeks where there's one guy available, and you have to have the highest waiver claim, and that's your one shot at getting one guy because there's no one. Jeff Wilson Juniors don't pop up every week.
Yeah, we can't all have Jeff Wilson Juniors who I believe I'd say 70%. Tell me if I'm right on with this. I'd say 70% of our listeners had no idea who he was this season.
I still barely know who he is.
All of a sudden he was playing.
Yeah. But this is what happens. That's why everyone says it takes skill to make the playoffs, luck to win the championship, because you pick up a guy like this, no one has, a lot of people have not heard of before last week, and now all of a sudden Matt Braid is out. He's going to be looking at a bunch of volume, and who knows what can happen. So fantasy's weird game.
Yeah, it is a weird game, and we will get into this week's matchups. We're gonna keep it light this show. We're gonna try and get you ready. It's our only show for the week. We're gonna try and help you get ready for your weekend's matchups, setting in the lineups and things like that by going through some of the players and their matchups. But we can't go too much further without first talking about the game that occurred last night, which was Thursday night. Obviously, as we're recording this, it's probably 2 nights ago as you're listening to this. But man, who knew Derrick Henry could run like that, huh?
Yeah, that was impressive. He hit 21 miles per hour. I think I saw for the old NFL Next Gen stats. That's very fast. One of the faster touchdowns and top speeds for a player to reach this year. A 99-yard touchdown where he just flicked people off of him left and right as he ran down the field. It was an impressive outing, but unfortunately, because of the season that Derrick Henry has had, not very many people benefited from that. A lot of stories of people, like, oh, Derrick Henry's on my bench, but you can't be upset about that.
No, you can't. You can't play that kind of game. When you're talking about fantasy football, you gotta make your decisions and you gotta live with them. And a guy that's averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 8 points for this a game for the season is a guy that sits on your bench. Obviously in a 16-team league that we're in for Falafel, he was started not by a playoff team, but he was started, and did get 47.8 points in that league with 17 carries for 238 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Huge.
It's funny. We've seen this from him before, and I guess we can take a minute and talk about this from a dynasty perspective because, like you said, it's not really impacting too many people going forward for redraft this year. But does it get you excited for Derrick Henry again, or do you think it's another one of those, all right, here's his flash for the year, and then, he's going back to, irrelevant running back?
Yeah, I'm not Sal, so I'm not going to go out and buy Derrick Henry everywhere I possibly can. I think that you look at his season's body of work, and this is definitely an outlier. This would be an outlier for just about anybody with 4 touchdowns and the yardage that he put up. But for him especially, this was a game that you wouldn't typically see again. Now, you hope that maybe, the coaching staff seeing him do something like this would try to give him a little more opportunity. But even when he was getting more carries earlier in the season, he wasn't doing much with them. So I think in a dynasty aspect, you take this opportunity to try and sell him. You try and get as much as you can. There are a lot of Derrick Henry truthers out there, so you can poke around and you can try and, offer him up to multiple teams and see what happens, because a lot of people will see that and get absolutely excited over that again. I don't trust him still. I wouldn't start him next week. You win your game this week and he was on your bench and you're like, oh, I got to get Derrick Henry in there because of what he did. He's going to end up, 17 carries for 38 yards and it's going to burn you.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I don't own him in any dynasty leagues, and I certainly am not looking to go out and buy him because he has a big night. I'll be okay with missing on him, to be honest with you. If I don't have him on any rosters and he does end up being a top back somewhere next year, I'm going to be okay with that because I think, I trusted my process, and my process tells me he's just not that guy. So
the best thing about the Derrick Henry explosion was that Sal obviously had him in our Falafel Assholes Dynasty League.
Yes.
And had him against Brandon.
former co-host Brandon, who, it is great because he has he's so defeated. He really did go all in, and this is a lessons learned for a dynasty perspective, right? A lot of people do make that late season push and they give up a lot of assets to try and stack their team for the year to make their run, and then something like Derrick Henry comes at them where a guy puts up 50 points in one game in your matchup as you're I think he's the 2 seed against the 7 seed.
Yep.
And it's going to be an uphill battle for him the rest of the way. So he very well could lose this week, his first round of the playoffs, after giving up a lot of future assets and whatnot to go for it.
Yeah, he had a great season, and he had our first year of it. He had a rough season, and it turned around real quick. And yeah, like you said, he went all out, and then he ran into this buzzsaw. It is unfortunate. He let it be known he was not very happy about what was going on.
Nope.
But yeah, I mean, I don't blame him. I don't blame him for making any of the moves to try and go for it. And he can keep going next year. It's not like his team is all sold out. It's all old veterans. Like he has Patrick Mahomes. He'll be okay.
So a little bit more on this game before we move on to the upcoming weekend. But I want to ask you a little bit about, for one, you mentioned D.D. Westbrook when we started the show because he's on your roster and he had a good night, 7 for 88 and a touchdown. He's got to be, I mean, I know they don't have a quarterback and, we'll see what happens in the offseason with them from that position. But Westbrook has shown me this year that he's a guy that is very, very talented, is working with nothing from the quarterback position and still producing. Is he a guy you're going to be high on going into next year?
I think that he's somebody that might still qualify as a sleeper next year because of his up and down games that he's had so far this season. He's had those games where he's, had one like last night. Then he's also had some games where he scored, between 5 and 7 points. That can be attributed to the awful quarterback play. I think the Jaguars are definitely going to address that this offseason. If they hit or miss on that, yet to be seen. But yeah, I think he's somebody that you can target next year and still won't cost you very much. He's not having the type of year this season that is going to drive his price up immensely. So he's definitely somebody that you can look forward to next year to add depth to your team and hope that he goes off, hope that the Jaguars get more stable quarterback under center. And he's doing everything too. He's not just doing deep routes and stuff. He's running all kinds of different routes. He's taking a lot of big hits last night, especially. He was getting knocked all over the field and he was just popping right back up and kept going. So definitely a tough guy. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do next year. Hopefully the Jaguars do something.
Yeah, it would be good if they actually could get themselves a quarterback. Hey, maybe they trade an early first-round pick for Brady and everyone wins. Right?
You ready? Are you out on Brady? Have I missed this? Are you out on Brady next year?
I love Brady. I mean, you can't be a Patriots fan and be out on Brady, but I will say it's scary. It's scary to think that our beloved franchise, the Patriots, will turn back into what every other team in the league has been, which is searching for a quarterback and not able to go to the AFC Championship every single year. So if we can get a top pick and get a quarterback, this isn't the year to do it anyway. I don't really love any of the quarterbacks that are coming out, to be quite honest with you. So it's not really the year. Next year would be the year I'd want that top pick. And I think you get one more year out of Brady. So that's my goal. But no, I would joke about Brady only because the Jaguars are a Super Bowl ready team if they had a quarterback. They really are.
Are they? Their defense is not what it was last year. It's not
very clear that defense quit though. Like if you watch the games, yeah. But if you watch the games, they're very this year compared to last year, they're very undisciplined. They make stupid mistakes. They take plays off. I mean, it's just to me, it looks like a team that quit. They're still talented players. They just don't want to play. And I can't really blame them. They had Blake Bortles all year. So
they had Blake Bortles the year before, and they were making him look good.
Yeah, you can only do that for so long. You can only do it for so long. So the other question I have for you, Mariota was not good in this game. Derrick Henry obviously rushed for 238 yards. He didn't have to be very good. He only threw the ball 24 times, but 162 yards and a pick, no touchdowns, didn't really do anything on the ground. If for some reason you're in a 16-team league and Mariota was one of the quarterbacks that you're counting on, Would you be concerned going forward in the fantasy playoffs with him asking for a friend?
Yeah, you can tell this friend that would definitely be a weakness of the team if you were having to start Marcus Mariota. He's not doing anything. He's not throwing the ball down the field. They're rarely taking shots. Their defense has been good enough to keep them in games where they're not, having to throw 100 times. And like you said, only 24 attempts last night with Derrick Henry running all over the place. They got the lead, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, he's not somebody he's not throwing for a bunch of touchdowns, turn the ball over. He's not running, so he's not using his legs as much, not getting you that rushing yardage that made him very viable in his rookie season. He's not somebody that I would be relying on. Now, obviously, I'm pretty sure your other option is Derek Carr, if he's even still on your roster.
Stafford, actually.
Stafford. And he's not questionable. Yeah. And he for some reason has been, both of them just so disappointing. They've been so disappointing. It's amazing how Stafford has this fall off, and I haven't heard Sal talk about him once this season. He's usually a big Stafford guy.
Yeah, I'm a big Stafford fan too. I feel like he's a guy that's always produced, and then this year they're not relying on him. That offense is a mess. I don't know what they're doing. I think they really need help. The offensive line, which was supposed to be a lot better, has been terrible. The running game is good if they consistently use Kerryon Johnson, which they don't. So then it's terrible again. And Stafford just has no weapons around him. Marvin Jones was hurt for a lot, and now he's done for the year. Golden Tate was hurt and then traded. Galladay's been good, but he's the only guy on the team, and they don't have Ebron anymore. They don't have their Michael Roberts, as much as Sal likes to tout him. Is not really the guy that you can depend on. So it's a tough season for them. I do think they'll get better in the offseason. They need to look at adding a couple of wide receivers maybe, but outside of that, I think they'll be fine going forward. Doesn't help me for this weekend where I do have Stafford as my starting quarterback, but luckily I did not start Mariota this week, so that's a good thing. Do you think there's any truth to the rumor that Sal's not here because we're playing this week and he just didn't want to hear it? I'm guessing he's going to take next week off too.
Blatant fear, yes.
Yeah,
that absolutely is the reason he's not here. He actually told me that I wasn't supposed to say anything. He sent me a box on the side. He's like, "Dude, I can't do it. Can't do it."
Don't blame him.
Pretty weak.
I'll certainly lose this weekend because of this conversation. But what are you gonna do? You know what? Before we go on to the upcoming games, though, Steve, I think we need to take a minute and remind everyone that they need to get their Festivus episode submissions in. I've seen a couple come in. I'm excited for them. They're great. We need more. Lots more. It's coming up very quickly. We're already 7 days into December. Festivus is December 23rd, but the episode will be recorded a little bit earlier than that. So do we have a deadline for when we need to get these in?
I don't know.
All right, great, good job. Let's aim for the 15th if you can. We'll give you another week to get those in. So please get them in. fantasyfootballfunhouse@gmail.com is where you want to send them if you have a submission. And what it is for those of you new listeners out there, it's anything you want it to be. You get 1 to 2 minute clip audio. You can say whatever you want. You can swear. You can say all kinds of bad, nasty things, but try to keep it somewhat clean and try to actually have a coherent thought. Is that a word?
Nope. That's cool.
What's the word?
A coherent thought he tries to tell people to have.
Right. It's weird, right? Cohesive. That's the word I was looking for.
There we
go. Thought. Yeah, try to do that because it sounds terrible when people don't. So anyway, just get those in. Get them in fantasyfootballfunhouse@gmail.com. Steve, you got yours? You're working on it?
It is a work in progress. I will be ready. I'm always ready. So don't worry about me. But this is the first year that I've actually been told that we're not supposed to bleep anything out.
Yep, no bleeps. We're allowing it. It's uncensored this year. We will probably get, banned from Google or from Apple Podcasts, but whatever. What are you going to do?
We're going to take our shot. But yeah, so that should be interesting. Be forewarned, when you see the Festivus episode comes out, it probably won't be child-friendly.
It will not be child-friendly. It will not be safe for work. Wear your headphones when you listen to it. It's gonna get nasty up in there. All right, let's move on to this weekend. So, Steve, I imagine you are in some playoffs, right? You're not just you didn't miss on everything, right?
No, I did not miss on everything. And as you like to drag most of my leagues into the mud, most of the playoffs that I missed this year, I was tanking for the vast majority of the year. So I will just say that disclaimer. Yes, I did miss
I mean,
another one.
you play a lot of redraft leagues. So with the fact that you're tanking's weird. Tanking in a redraft, not a great strategy.
Hey, we're trying it out this year. All right, we're seeing what happens. No, but I am. I've got a few bye weeks this week, and then I'm in a few playoff games, and one of them's got me a little worried. I'm not gonna lie.
All right. Well, as we typically do, we like to go through some projections. These are ESPN projections for the Falafel League, which is a traditional half-point PPR scoring. So nothing too crazy with the settings. And we like to pick out some projections that we are curious about that make us think about things a little bit here. I'm going to start off with one that I am curious about your opinion on because he's been very good of late. Russell Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
Been a guy that, historically has done this, started slow and then picked things up as the season went on. Over 20 points the last 2 weeks. And plays Minnesota, a defense that's pretty solid. I mean, they're in the top 7 or 8 of defenses against quarterbacks for fantasy this year. And the projection here is 17.7, so it's lower than his last couple weeks. In fact, he hasn't had a game in the 17s since way back in week 4 against Arizona. So what say you about Russell Wilson, Steve? Because if you're in a playoff matchup, and obviously you've had good weeks for the last few weeks, I said he hasn't been under 17 the last, since week 4. He's probably your guy going through, but you might have another option. You might have been streaming here and there to begin the season. Is he a guy you're rolling out no matter what?
Yeah, absolutely. Russell Wilson in December in fantasy football, that's a magical thing. It's a good thing. He does good stuff.
It is a good thing.
Every single year. This is a primetime game, Monday night in Seattle. I am absolutely 100% rolling Russell Wilson out there. I would bet money on him getting more than 17 points. Chris Carson, a little banged up as he is each and every week. He had a finger, something wrong with his finger. He's probably going to play, but I think that he's going to end up, Russell Wilson, that is going to end up having to throw the ball to keep them in this game. I mean, he scored 24 points last week on 185 yards. He had 4 touchdowns and no interceptions, no turnovers. He is good at the end of the year. And like you said, he hasn't had a game less than 18 points since week 4, and he's just been solid ever since. So yeah, absolutely. Russell Wilson has gotten you into the playoffs at this point. You keep rolling with him.
A guy that probably hasn't necessarily gotten you into the playoffs, but had a great week last week against one of the worst defenses in the league in Kansas City. The guy you mentioned, Derek Carr, goes up against Pittsburgh, middle of the road team against quarterbacks. He's projected to get 14.9 points in this one. I'm curious if you think that he could keep his streak from playing Kansas City last week alive, and he can go for another big game.
Derek Carr is anti-Russell Wilson. He is somebody that I would not be trusting at all. You probably weren't benefiting from him getting that 24 points against Kansas City last week. He's not consistent enough for you to roll him out there against Pittsburgh. Yeah, you'd expect Pittsburgh to get up big and Derek Carr to have to throw to keep pace in this game to try and catch up. Maybe a lot of garbage time there. But I could also see a lot of interceptions going on there as well, even though he hasn't thrown an interception since week 5. So he's been pretty solid there. I'm not relying on Derek Carr. I'm definitely not putting him in this position.
Here's one that people could be actually making a decision between, right? Because if you had Derek Carr and you drafted him, and you're probably scrambling to find quarterbacks as the season has gone on. Maybe you have both. You're streaming both Carr and Keenum, who has not been good, but has flashed a little bit. He's going up against San Francisco. Would you go Keenum or Carr?
That's ugly.
Yeah, it's ugly.
That is ugly. I think I would go Derek Carr just because I think he's got a better chance to throw more touchdowns. Case Keenum he's not been, he hasn't been trigger happy enough, and he's had too many issues in the red zone. He throws a lot of red zone interceptions. I wouldn't trust Case Keenum, even though it's a nice matchup against San Francisco. I, for some reason, feel like Denver is going to be so stupid and lose this game. So yeah, I think I would go Derek Carr over Case Keenum because I think he will take more chances, more opportunity to get more touchdowns, have to score more points than Denver potentially would have to score.
Yeah, I think I think I'm going to go with Carr as well on that one. It's just, to me, it's Denver or San Francisco not a little bit worse against quarterbacks, and honestly, I just trust Carr a little bit, although I probably shouldn't. But he's just a guy that I think has the potential to. He's got more of an upside, I'll say. I'll bet their. Yeah. I put their floor at about the same, but he does. I think he has the potential to have a big game. I don't know that I see Keenum ever throwing for, getting a 25-point game. So. Especially,
losing Emmanuel Sanders this week, I would be surprised if all of a sudden he's thrown for 303 touchdowns, which Derek Carr absolutely could do, and still lose their game.
Speaking of which, we should probably backtrack a little bit and maybe talk about some of the injuries. I did have that on my list of things to go over, and yet, I skipped them completely. Melvin Gordon, obviously out. Kerryon Johnson is out.
Yep.
Deshaun Jackson is out.
Yes.
Looks like Julio Jones and T.Y. Hilton are both going to play, but you got to keep an eye on them because they're game time decisions, technically. Kelvin Benjamin signed with Kansas City. Sammy Watkins out in Kansas City again.
Maybe for the rest of the year or until the playoffs at least.
It sounds like it's a 4 to 6 week injury. So yeah, he could very well miss the whole year, but gonna be tough there. Evan Ingram, your boy, it looks like he's going to be back in the lineup. So, I don't know if he's a guy that you want to get right in, but we'll talk about that when we get to tight ends. And Duke Johnson, another guy that might very well be out because he's attending some family issues. So, I don't know if he's returned to the team.
Yes, that was so weird today. I got an alert on my phone, saying
very strange
that he was gone, and then that he hadn't been with the team for personal issues, like you said, for the last 2 days. And then an hour later, it was like Duke Johnson's back at the facility. He went through all the meetings and went through practice. He's going to play.
Yeah. So all right. And Doug Baldwin, another guy that it looks like he could be a game time decision after missing all of the week, basically. So
yeah, I don't think he's going to play.
Doesn't seem like it. Sure doesn't seem like it.
I would make backup plans for Doug Baldwin.
You know what we say when that happens, Steve?
What?
Lock it up.
No one says that. Who says that? You say that?
I say it. Lock it up. Lock it up. You see what I did there, Steve?
I do.
Lock it up. It's funny. It takes a minute, right?
I appreciate you, Kevin. I do.
All right. Let's move along to running back because no one really cares about the rest of the quarterbacks anyway. We're dealing with a lot of single quarterback leagues, and if you're in 2 quarterback leagues, you're struggling anyway because it's all a mess in the bottom half.
What do you got Baker Mayfield this week? You're talking about streaming quarterback. You have Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield. Who are you putting in?
Oh, Mayfield all day long. Mayfield looks phenomenal all of a sudden. I mean, like he ever since they fired Hugh Jackson, he has really turned a corner. And he looks great. Even against, he threw three interceptions last week against Houston. Houston's a very tough defense, but he also threw for almost 400 yards and a touchdown. So he salvaged the day by having a huge yardage day and did get in the end zone. Week before that, he throws 4 touchdowns. The week before that, he throws 3 touchdowns. The kid's a stud. He's very good, and he looks like he's starting to be in command of the offense. Obviously, he's going to make mistakes and have interceptions from time to time, but you're also talking about him going up against the Carolina Panthers, whose secondary have been just not good lately. So
well, I was
gonna say they can't get any pressure on the quarterback, so it looks like he'll be able to, stay in the pocket and maybe even run around a little bit and extend some plays. And that's where Baker really seems to thrive right now.
Yeah, and Carolina against quarterbacks the last 5 weeks, they have given up 14 touchdowns with only 2 interceptions. So they are just giving it a ton of points. I would expect Carolina to put up a ton of points this week as well because they need to keep on winning to stay in the playoff hunt. And I think Cleveland will have to keep pace in this game. So I think there are a lot of fantasy points to be had in this matchup this week.
What do we got for the over-under there? Do you have it in front of you? Usually have those lines.
I don't. Just go ahead and talk about something. I will not pay attention to you, and I will find out.
I'll tell you, sometimes it's really hard to work with people. I would like to do a podcast by myself. I don't know that anyone ever listened to it, but at least it'd be more fun for me. I really think that I could get away with that.
You know what? I appreciate you slumming it with us from time to time. You know, we got Sal is on Sirius Radio Saturdays, Fanball Radio. Kevin,
Fanball.com. He has an author page.
That's right. He's got his very own author page. And now you, with all of your Dynasty Trade Calculator stuff, you guys you're just blossoming right before my eyes.
It's all you. We both attribute it all to you, Steve. We couldn't, without your mediocrity and terribleness, we wouldn't have been in very marginal fashion.
Hey, I'm an example as what not to do if you want to make it in this industry. The over-under for this game is 48.
48.
So not as high as I would expect it.
Yeah, that's low this year, isn't it? I mean, it's not really low, actually. That is still high, fairly high over-under. But for this year, it's definitely on the lower end of the spectrum. But all right, well, let's like I said, I'm trying to get through this tonight for you so you can get back to your kids because I know that's important to you.
I left them alone tonight. I didn't care.
Throw them in the dog crate. That's what I usually do.
That's good. That's what you said. That's what I was trying out. Your idea.
Yes. Good method. I promise. No one will ever know except for the people listening to the podcast. I don't really throw my daughter in a crate. I promise. Yeah. She goes in there on her own. She loves that thing. It's crazy.
How she locks it from the inside, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how she does that. It's weird, but it works out. All right, we're gonna move on to running back, and we talked about Carolina and Cleveland being a high-scoring game. Does that mean it's wheels up for Nick Chubb, and he's gonna help me cruise past Sal?
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about Duke Johnson. You know, he did, even though it looks like he's on track to play, Nick Chubb has definitely been the main horse back there, and I would expect that to continue even, a little more so this week than he had in the last few weeks, even though he's obviously been a monster. So, yeah, absolutely. Nick Chubb.
He is the fifth highest projected player on ESPN, in that league. There's Elliott comes in at number 1, 21.1 points projected. Christian McCaffrey at 20.6. Todd Gurley at 19.4, Saquon Barkley at 19.3, and Nick Chubb at 18.8, ahead of Alvin Kamara, who's at 18.7. Does that sound right to you? Not that any of this matters to any start-sit decisions, and now I'm just curious about these. How you would order these guys?
I mean, that's a high projection. He's in good company up there, that's for damn sure. But I can't argue against it. He gets a ton of volume. He is everything that we were excited about Carlos Hyde earlier in the year for Cleveland. He was getting a bunch of volume. They like to run the ball a lot, even if they're losing in their game. And he was getting touchdowns. That's exactly what Nick Chubb is doing, but Nick Chubb is better than Carlos Hyde. So he's doing more with his opportunity, which is going to give him more opportunity. And he's, exceeding with what he's getting. So yeah, absolutely. Nick Chubb, I mean, that might be a little bit high. I would love him to go over that. If I were a betting man, I might take the under just because it seems a little high, but maybe I'd bet on a push. I'd probably get some good odds on that.
All right, so Christian McCaffrey, just for a quick check in on him, 863 yards rushing right now and 663 yards receiving. That means
he's going to make it?
You're looking at under 50 yards a game rushing and about under 100 yards receiving. The receiving is going to be tough. It's going to be close.
He's going to get the rushing on Sunday.
The rushing is going to be easy.
He's going to hit 1,000 on Sunday.
I don't think that'll be an issue for him, but man, oh man, I don't know if he's going to get to that 1,000 yards receiving. It's going to be very close.
You think he can get to 2,000 total scrimmage yards? They've got 4 games left.
Yeah, I do think he'll get there because he's at what? He's what did I say? He's at 1520. So you're talking 480 in 4 games. That's nothing for him. I mean,
120 yards a game.
Yeah, that's chump change for him, right?
Chump change. Actually, I could go for him to have a very subpar game this week. It would benefit me greatly. I don't think it's going to happen. The matchup is too good for him. that he is rolling. They are utilizing him how we wish that they would have done last year and earlier on this season. And so I think they're going to continue doing that. I'd expect him to get, 2 to 3 touchdowns this week. He's going to score a ton of points.
Yeah. So looking over to your team, the Denver Broncos. And by the way, I like how you haven't renounced your team yet. I mean, so many people are just giving up on their teams. They're into fantasy and they're starting to just focus on fantasy because their teams suck. Your team still playoff eligible, by the way. You haven't given up on them. No, although I'll bet you're pissed that they're winning.
Yeah, I am. I was just talking earlier about how I would want something to happen because it helps their playoff chances. It's a struggle. I would love to see them in the playoffs. Are they going to win the Super Bowl? Hell no. They're not good. They're not that good. I don't trust Case Keenum enough to he's not on the Vikings last year. He's not that Case Keenum this year. So, it's rough. I enjoy seeing them win, but I know it hurts their draft stock, and I know they need a quarterback still. And yeah, double-edged sword. It's fun. But it's not fun.
Meanwhile, Philip Lindsay has been very good. One of the lone bright spots for the Denver Broncos this year. Him and Emmanuel Sanders, who is now out. He rushed for 19 times for 157 yards and 2 touchdowns in the last game against Cincinnati. Now we know Cincinnati is downright awful against running backs.
Yes. But
he gets San Francisco this week, who is, middle of the pack, and he's just on a roll. So projections here are at 14.8. Is he a must start for you no matter what at this point in the season? Going into the playoffs?
Absolutely. He is obviously for a few weeks now cemented that role as their premier rusher. He's getting, he's out carrying Royce Freeman easily each and every week. He's obviously the more dynamic player. And just watching him play and the way that Denver utilizes him, I don't know how you can sit him. He gets he makes the most out of what he gets. He's not rushing the ball 20 times a game. He's not getting 10 receiving. He's not getting 10 receptions a game. He is making the most out of the carries that he's getting, and that's just leading to more and more volume for him. It has been exciting. He's the leading rusher over the last 2 weeks. Do you know who the third leading rusher over the last 2 weeks is?
Nick Chubb?
Josh Allen.
Oh, nice. Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's that kind of year.
Yeah, exactly. Just like everyone expected. So, yeah, absolutely. Philip Lindsay has earned the right to, you picked him up off the waiver wire for free. He's got to easily be the second best running back on your roster in most cases, if not the best running back on your roster for some teams at this point. So, yeah, absolutely. Get him in there. He will get more than 14 points.
Gus Edwards is a guy that has been a little up and down so far this season. He came out hot in week 11, again against Cincinnati, where he had 115 yards and a touchdown. Followed it up with 118 yards against Oakland the following week, and then 82 yards against Atlanta. He goes up against Kansas City this week, who their defense can't stop anyone. So you'd think it would be a good matchup. However, we've seen the Kansas City Chiefs blow out a lot of teams, and they start hot and they score a lot. Now Baltimore's defense has been very good this season, but does it concern you with Gus Edwards that he's just not involved in the passing game at all? They're using Ty Montgomery now, and that's really, he's there on passing downs. Are you concerned that they get behind and they have to throw a little bit, which isn't really their style with Lamar Jackson right now, but they may have to have those guys passing weapons in, and that Edwards will kind of take a back seat in this one?
Yeah, it absolutely is a little bit concerning, especially, he only had 82 yards last week against Atlanta, and we've only talked all season long about how Atlanta has given up 1,000 receptions to running backs this year. So him not being used in that game, especially in this day and age when a lot of leagues are in some sort of PPR style scoring format, you need your running back to be involved in the passing game in some sort of capacity. It makes him a little more touchdown dependent, knowing that he's only going to be accruing those yards on the ground, which makes the touchdowns a little harder to come by, knowing that he's only got those fewer opportunities to do that. So yeah, I would be a little more hesitant to get him in my lineup. I think this game, This week against Kansas City is a little scary. I'm more interested to see how Kansas City reacts to Baltimore as opposed to what Baltimore is able to do to potentially have to keep up with Kansas City. I want to see how Pat Mahomes and this offense goes up against this Baltimore defense because, like you said, they are very good. They're playing very good right now. They're on a winning streak, and so I'm looking forward to this game. It should be a good one.
All right, before we move on to wide receiver, this is a question that I got asked today by a league mate of mine. Pick 2 to start this week, and I think the first guy on the list is a lock. So it's really going to be a pick 1. But Nick Chubb, who I think is a lock, like we just talked about. So pick one of these guys remaining: Austin Eckler, Spencer Ware, Gus Edwards, who we just talked about, and Shady McCoy, who blew up against the Jets in their last meeting, but has been so marginal this year.
I am going back to Austin Eckler this week. I know
really?
I am. And it is mostly, it's for 2 reasons. One, they're playing Cincinnati. You just mentioned how, Gus Edwards and Philip Lindsay, not too hot names right now, but not too typical names you'd expect to hear, tearing up a defense, but they were able to do so. This defense against running backs is the worst in the league, I believe. And so I am getting Austin Eckler back in there because I think that even though they've said that he's going to be splitting time with Justin Jackson, I think this is going to be a bounce back game for him. He did not look good against Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh was pretty dead set on stopping Austin Eckler last week, which is why Keenan Allen had such a huge game. I think this is a bounce back game for him, and I'm banking on that because I know if I bench Austin Eckler this week as Melvin Gordon's backup, he's going to score 30 points, and I'm going to take advantage of that. He's going to get a couple touchdowns, Austin Eckler.
So for me, I told him to go with Gus Edwards, because for one, I don't trust Ware. I don't think Ware's. I mean, obviously against Baltimore is a terrible matchup to begin with, and I just don't think Ware. I said it in one of our chats. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm just not, as much as I like Ware and liked him coming into the season as a backup to get some work. As a lead guy right now, I just don't think he's that guy, and I don't think they're going to use him the same way they used Hunt, and I just don't think he can fill those shoes. So he'll be serviceable, but not great. We saw that from his first week as the guy, and I think it'll continue, particularly against a tough defense. So it's not him. For me, and we just talked about McCoy being done, I think he's toast for the year. I just don't think he has the legs anymore. But so for me, with Eckler versus Edwards, I'm concerned about Eckler. I think Justin Jackson gets a lot of the work in this particular one. I think the Bengals have been better against defending the pass or the receptions for the running back than they have on the ground. So I think they're going to look to keep a lot of it on the ground and in between the tackles. I think there's a solid chance that the Chargers get up early in this one, in which case they're just going to be running the ball heavy to grind it out. And I think they give up a lot of touchdowns on the ground as well. So I think you can see a lot of Justin Jackson in this one. Maybe he doesn't get 20 carries or something like that, but I think you can see closer to 15, and I think you're going to see Eckler fall into more of the role that he's been in the entire year than an expanded role. And while it's still a great matchup. I have no problems with people starting Eckler. I think Jackson's going to eat enough that I would probably go with Gus Edwards in this one.
Would you start Justin Jackson over Eckler if you had them both?
If I had them both, I would start Justin Jackson over Eckler. And it's probably out there. I'm sure it's not even close. The projections here have Jackson at 9 points and Eckler all the way up at 17. So ESPN clearly agrees with you. I just think it's going to be a big Jackson game. I've been wrong before though, so
I've heard.
All right, let's move along to the wide receiver position. I'm going to ask you. We'll start off with you, and I'm putting you on the spot. So, try to not have too much dead air. Any big questions for you at wide receiver this week? What was your big question of the week for wide receiver?
Dead air. I'll start with Tyreek Hill. We were just talking about this game. We're talking about defense. Baltimore first against wide receivers. And now, like we mentioned, with Sammy Watkins down, not playing this week, Kelvin Benjamin just signed, but also not going to be ready. So Tyreek Hill, kind of the only guy left standing there, the number one wide receiver in the league, averaging 19.1 and half point PPR, but only projected for 15.7 points this week. Are you worried about Tyreek Hill in this first week of the playoffs and him having this, pretty difficult matchup?
Can I say something right now that I think a lot of people are don't want to hear?
Sure.
I think this could be a dud for Kansas City. This has dud game written all over it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, they're at home, so everyone's expecting them to be fine. Mahomes is on pace to come close, or if not break the touchdown record. He's been great. The offense has been phenomenal the whole year, but without Kareem Hunt and against a very good Baltimore defense, with Kansas City riding high and a lot on the line pressure-wise, given that they still currently hold the number one seed, it feels like a game where they're going to have a game somewhere where they come out flat, and I don't know. It just feels like it could be it. Am I crazy? Yeah. I'm probably crazy.
I mean, I don't think you are. And I think Baltimore is definitely a team that is not going to be intimidated by a Kansas City offense by going into Arrowhead and playing against this type of team. I think it'll be a good game. There's a reason we've been talking about it the entire time. It's because it's got a lot of fantasy implications because of how good Kansas City's been. But this Baltimore defense has also been very good. And now they've got some fantasy relevant players on their offense as well. So I could see it as well. I'm not a big Spencer Ware guy. I know we moved on from running backs, but I have to ask you, if you had to choose between Spencer Ware against Baltimore or Stephen Ridley against Oakland, who are you going to start, Kevin?
Oh man,
I really 100% think Stephen Ridley is going to get a touchdown this week.
It's so sad that Sal's not on the podcast this week.
I know.
I've just been waiting for the time when I could rub Stephen Ridley in his face, and this is it, and it's gonna happen. And you're right, I agree with you, Steve. And he's not here. That'd be a close one for me, actually. I think Stephen Ridley's gonna get a touchdown at least in that game. And I don't know that Spencer Ware is, so I think that's what would make it very close for me.
All right, I don't think we can gloss over Jalen Samuels this week with John Connor, James Conner, John Connor, big Terminator. Too. Yes, but James Conner not playing this week, so Jalen Samuels, big hullabaloo about him. But Stephen Ridley, do we think that Stephen Ridley is going to outscore Jalen Samuels?
Yes.
Yes,
I think it's to be close. I think they will truly probably split. I don't think any one's going to get more than the other necessarily. I think there'll be a split. I think they'll both be on the field. I think the difference is going to be the touchdown that I see Stephen Ridley getting, so I can gloat against.
I think he's going to get
against Sal. So 2 touchdowns.
I don't have the balls to start him anywhere, but I think he's going to get 2.
Wow. All right. Yeah, with Kansas City, we'll see, because you know that I have never been one to trust Andy Reid, and the next 3 weeks we're going to find out if he has actually learned how to coach and not, urinate down his leg with Baltimore, the Los Angeles Chargers, and then Seattle. So it'll be a tough stretch for them to keep that number 1 seed. All right, let's keep moving along here. Stefon Diggs is a guy that I want to ask you about because, for one, he's a little bit banged up. He's questionable. You're going to keep an eye on him. I think he's going to play, though. He's been so up and down this year. I mean, usually a guy that's very consistent with the number of catches that he has. He's been all over the map. Lowest catch total of 3, highest catch total of 13. So he's all over the place. He's had games in the 20s. He's had games in the single digits. We talked about them playing Seattle, who has been much better of late, both offensively and defensively, but mostly offensively. They're still giving up a lot of points to wide receivers, 12th most on the year. Are you concerned at all about Stefon Diggs, and is he a guy that you might look for a replacement, projected at 13.7 on ESPN?
No, I think that he's definitely earned that. If he plays, you get him in your lineup. Seattle, like you mentioned, in the bottom part of the league, and definitely in the last 5 weeks, they are the 6th worst team against wide receivers. They've given up 5 touchdowns and almost 1,000 yards. So I think a lot of it just really depends on Kirk Cousins. That offense has kind of been living and dying through him. And when it's bad, it's been really bad for him. And when it's been good, he's been able to spread the ball around and get a lot of, passes out to a lot of different receivers. So Stephon Diggs definitely benefits from that. I think you roll him out there, and he's been consistent enough where he's not killing you. He's not going to hurt you, and he's got all the upside. We know how good that he can be. So I think you obviously roll him out there as long as he's healthy.
All right, and let's see. What other good ones do we have here? Golden Tate had a decent week last week, 7 for 85 and a touchdown. It was his, second week, I believe, with the Eagles, third week with the Eagles?
I think third sounds good.
Third. We'll go with third. Might even be four. We're gonna go with third for sure. He goes up against Dallas this week. Actually, it has to be his fourth because in week 10 he played Dallas. This will be his third matchup against Dallas this season.
That's crazy.
That's weird. That never happens.
No, that's odd. That is an oddity.
Projected to get 9.3 in this one. Dallas has been very good defensively this year. The fourth best against opposing wide receivers. Is Golden Tate a guy, I think for the majority of the season he's been barely flex worthy, but given his big week last week, is he a guy you're looking to get in your lineup?
I don't think so. I think that this game being on the road, I think Dallas is a hot team right now, as much as I hate to admit it for Kareem's purposes. I don't like talking nice things about Dallas, but they are they're a hot team, and I think that Golden Tate, he did get the touchdown last week. I wouldn't expect that again. I think that 9.3 is probably. I mean, obviously, we know that he can score more than that, but that offense is you can't trust it right now. You can't rely on it, and so I don't think that I would be putting him in my lineup. I think somebody that's probably close to him that I was just going to ask you about would be Courtland Sutton.
I was just going. He was next. He was next on my list.
Look at that. Look at that. What do you think about him?
He's actually up there a little bit higher, 10.4, so almost over a full point higher in the projections. I love this matchup. I love Courtland Sutton as a talent. I think he's been the typical rookie this year, a little up, a little down, showing some flashes, runs good routes, who's good, good at the catch point, things like that. But ultimately, still a little raw. However, with Emmanuel Sanders out and this being a prime matchup against the San Francisco 49ers, who've given up the sixth most points to opposing wide receivers, I think he's going to be featured, and I think he's going to be, peppered with targets, and I like him in this one. I'll definitely take the over on the 10.4. What about you?
I would definitely lean with the over as well. Are you worried that with no Emmanuel Sanders there, that Richard Sherman is going to be on him for the majority of the game?
I don't think Richard Sherman is someone to really be afraid of anymore. I mean, he's still a decent cornerback, but he's not what he was. He's not a shutdown guy. He's not a guy that I don't think you can throw to anymore. I don't think he's a guy that any rookie coming in is going to be that intimidated by anymore. He's not himself. He's already talking. Their news came out that he's talking about moving to safety next year and things like that. So he knows it, and I think it's pretty clear that. So I do think Courtland Sutton can win against him, and it's a tough match. It could be a little tougher as a rookie, and given the fact that he's going to be the focal point of that offense, right? I mean, you'll have guys like Deshaun Hamilton and whatever the other guy's name is. I can't even think of his name right now.
Tim White.
Not Tim White. It's not Tim White. It's Tim. It's Tim something, but it's not Tim White. Aren't you supposed to know this? Is this your team?
Yeah, it is. His name is escaping me. Right. I guess Tim White, all right?
We're going to go with Tim White, even though that's just blatantly not his name. So, all right. I don't even know where to go from here. Traquan Smith. Traquan Smith is a guy that has had some fantasy value throughout the season. He's missed a couple of games. Looks like he's going to be in the game this week, I believe, going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which is another decent matchup, although they've been better than they have been in the past. not quite as terrible as they were, but because they're the second worst team against opposing wide receivers as opposed to the first, which I think they've been for the last like 3 years. So, but we know that Michael Thomas is the guy in New Orleans. Would you be trusting Traquan Smith in a playoff matchup?
I don't think I would be. And honestly, this Saints game being in Tampa Bay, weather not supposed to be great. Everybody knows that Drew Brees and no. No, it's not. Drew Brees, not the same quarterback when he has to play outside. So I think if you are relying on some Saints players this week in your playoff matchup, I think you should be a little bit worried. I think you should expect some lower production out of them. I know Michael Thomas has not been the same exact wide receiver that he was at the beginning of the season. I actually think that he will do better in this game than he has been. I think it'll be more of a bounce back, an unexpected bounce back for the passing game. But for running and, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, I think it's going to be a little tough. I think that's going to be a little lower scoring. I think the total for this game opened at 58. It's dropped all the way to 54. And I think people are worried about what it's going to do for these offenses.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be as low. I mean, it might be lower scoring, I guess, but I still think that, like you said, I think Michael Thomas is going to be Michael Thomas of the beginning of the season in this one. It's a good matchup. I think Drew Brees will find him. I think they'll make it work. Alvin Kamara is a guy you're obviously not taking off your roster. He's gonna get some. Traquan Smith is definitely a guy that I might pass on if I have a better option for matchup wise. He's a matchup based player at this point in the season, particularly going into the first round of the playoffs. So, all right, let's talk about tight ends a little bit before we get out of here, since we have
Jalen Samuels.
What's that?
Jalen Samuels.
What about Jalen Samuels? Oh, the tight end, Jalen Samuels. Yeah. Well, he can't play both. He doesn't have eligibility on fantasy teams. It's kind of ridiculous.
Oh, on Yahoo, he does.
Does he really?
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
He is running back, tight end eligibility.
Well, that's great. Get him into your tight end.
Dirty. I mean, think of how many people are just going to be able to put him in there. And like all of a sudden, the awful, terrible position that when you don't have Zach Ertz or Travis Kelce, you're like, oh, all of a sudden you have potential for 15 points instantly. That's great.
That's great. Not fair. All right. Houston Texans, however, give up the 8th most points to opposing tight ends. Is Eric Ebron the tight end 1? Go ahead, say it. He is.
No, I won't say it. I will never take that honor away from Travis Kelce. I will never take it away.
Do you see a scenario where Eric Ebron outscores Travis Kelce?
Yes, of course. Travis Kelce has a tough matchup this week. Eric Ebron, he's been, what do you want me to say? He's been good. He's been good this year. He's scored a lot of touchdowns. I don't know what else to say. He's gotten all the opportunity in the world. Jack Doyle could not stay healthy, now on the IR. And so, yeah, absolutely. You can't sit Eric Ebron, even though he did get a 0 a couple weeks ago. Don't forget about that. But he's been too good to ever bench. Yes, he can finish ahead of Travis Kelce. Yes, he can finish as the tight end 1 this week. But
is this the week?
It'd be so fun if he didn't. It'd be so fun for me.
It'd be so fun if he did. All right, is this the week that all of the people who have had Rob Gronkowski on their team all year and keep rolling him out and keep getting screwed, is this the week that they bench him and he goes off?
I hope so, because I'm not benching him, and I need him to go off.
Can you bench Rob Gronkowski? Obviously, we're in a 16-team league. Tight ends like absolute garbage for most of the league, so you're not benching him. But can you, in a normal 12-team league, can you bench Rob Gronkowski?
Yeah, because I think at the beginning of the year, you were able to draft Gronk, and you were also probably able to pick up like a George Kittle at the end of the draft. And so you probably have another option right now. And it's not, past, Kittle, Ebron, Ertz, and Kelce, Gronk has kind of fallen into that second pack. He is not.
Well, before we get out of here, let's do a little who would you play here?
Okay.
All right. So it's
would you rather, Kevin?
Yeah, would you rather? So, this is all in relation to Rob Gronkowski, right?
Okay.
So Rob Gronkowski or Jimmy Graham?
Jimmy Graham's got a good matchup.
Jimmy Graham against Atlanta, who is...
No, I'm still going Gronk. I'm a believer.
You're going to go Gronk there.
I love Gronk.
I do too. All right, Evan Ingram coming off an injury, hasn't played in 2 weeks against Washington. Evan Ingram or Rob Gronkowski?
Rob Gronkowski.
All right.
Although I have to start Evan Ingram in a league this week in a playoff game, and it's scaring me so much.
Here's the good one. Your boy, Cameron Brate, going up against New Orleans. Cameron Brate or Rob Gronkowski?
I would still start Gronk.
Yeah, surprisingly, the Saints are very good against tight end. They're not really good to go against much else, but very good against tight end. So,
although New England in Miami, Kevin, New England in Miami,
it's tough. It's
just
tough.
Those words right there. You know
makes
that
me a little nervous.
It's gonna be a tough game.
I'm not gonna lie. It's not what you want. All right, Here's one. Vance McDonald against the worst team in the league against tight ends, the Oakland Raiders, by a decent margin, actually. Vance McDonald or Rob Gronkowski?
Now that one I might have to go Vance McDonald.
Really?
I might, and I'd probably regret it, but you start your tight ends against the Raiders, and that one would be a lot closer. All these other ones have been kind of easy, but
right.
Like I said, I'm a Gronk truther. I like Gronk. And you know how good he is. You know he can score touchdowns. It's Tom Brady's fault.
We know how much you love Baltimore tight ends. Mark Andrews or Rob Gronkowski?
Rob Gronkowski.
All right. And on that note, let's get out of here. Why don't you wrap it up?
All right. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Fantasy Football Funhouse. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. And, of course, you can follow us on Twitter at FF Funhouse. And be sure to go to fanball.com and check out Sal's author page and some of the articles that he writes over there.
All right. And I just want to remind everyone in this holiday season to give a little while you're playing fantasy football. Organize your league mates to do some charity work or donate some of your league fees or whatever it may be to help out some of those in need during this time of the year. And, of course, get those Festivus episode submissions in fantasyfootballfunhouse@gmail.com is where you want to send them, or you can hit up myself or Steve or Sal on Twitter and figure out how to get them to us directly. Whatever you want to do, we want more submissions, so get them in quick, get them in now. Otherwise, Steve's going to start sending out scathing emails to those of you who sent them last year and haven't gotten your submissions for this year in. So
that's right.
That's it. We will be back next week. See ya.